The one you've all been waiting for. The one about women manipulating men. Welcome, guys. Next episode of Practical Female Psychology. We're on Chapter 11, Stages of Manipulation. This is, I think, one of the more profound chapters. If you've noticed, once we get all the groundwork out of the way, these later chapters really start to delve into all kinds of details that matter so much, whether your relationship lasts a day, a week, a month, or a decade. In this case, there's going to be what Black Label Logic Carl, he refers to as the betaization of men. I think that's what they refer to it as here. There's going to be 3 sections. First one is the stages of female manipulation, the manipulation endgame, and then ending off with some practical advice. So getting into it with a quote. Manipulation can be defined as the attempt to influence another person's mind to achieve a certain outcome. Manipulation is often seen as a negative thing. We, however, are not judgmental about manipulation and actually consider it a positive feature, which is designed to keep life continuing on this planet. Now, on a biological level, the female of our species is programmed to 1. Elicit a strong sexual reaction in one or more strong males, 2. Feel a strong sexual attraction for such males, 3. Become impregnated by her choice of male, and 4. Have a guy provide material for both her and her infant child, and then 5. Subconsciously operate in such a way to have her sexual attraction for that male decrease, and then 6. Wash, rinse, repeat. She will tend to have more sexual intercourse and more children. This is why marriages never seem to work out for so many people. This is why girls all of a sudden fall for a guy when they have baby rabies, have the kid turns 5, and all of a sudden their libido drops off a cliff. It's all about manipulation. Now, I know we have this argument all the time, and you can tell when a guy still got that little ways to go on red pill when you bring up manipulation. Usually people will say, oh, the red pill manipulates women, or, running game manipulates women and all this crap. And it's like, yeah, most guys apologize. They're like, no, it's not manipulative. It's just being your best self. Or it's not manipulative. It's just this. It's always just something that's not manipulation, because manipulation is bad, right? Except for it's not. Like, life is manipulation. And this constant backpedaling for it is really just letting everybody else manipulate, but you trying to pretend like you're above it all. Like, if a baby is crying for you to coddle them, that's manipulative. If a girl is screaming like she's going to get hurt, there's actually a part of your limbic brain that starts pumping adrenaline in there. A dog yelping in pain, same thing. All these things are manipulation. Life is manipulation. Your boss offering you a paycheck in order to get you to do some work and threatening you with it is manipulation. And so, from a red pill perspective, a guy has to unabashedly start pursuing his own map, his own mental point of origin. And you just have to accept the fact that everybody is in a constant process of manipulation. Put another example out there too. I know a lot of guys love rambling about how great logic and ration is and how it's better. We aren't designed for objective truth. It's a great research paper coming out of Nature magazine showing, and it's not even hard to describe either, because in your head, you can't really understand the size of an atom. A cell makeup, you can't really see them. In the universe, they talk about the distance between things, but if you'll notice, we don't really think of things very well. Like, we don't conceptualize the idea of infinity or billions of galaxies or any of that crap. So obviously, the objective world on the macro or the micro are things that we can't really conceptualize. And so we have to come up with mathematics, and we can talk about it abstractly. So we are designed for a very thin slice of world, the meso framework. What the hell does this have to do with picking up women in relationships? Well, everything. Because we aren't designed for truth, what purpose does logic serve? Well, logic is actually a way to manipulate somebody based on pattern recognition. Humans get very, very comfortable when it comes to patterns. If I know, it's because they're predictable. If I know if I bring a spear with my buddies to go to this deer, we're going to get a deer and we're going to eat tonight. Very logical, very rational. When somebody is using logic or ration towards you, it's trying to convince you that there is these patterns in life, and as long as you follow what the person is saying who's being logical, it would make more sense. So again, even by trying not to be manipulative, you're actually being manipulative. So just own it and just make sure you do it, and make sure when you do it, it's to your own benefit and to the benefit of those who have chosen to be valuable to you that get to stay around you. Another point that's didn't really know where else to fit it is this small quote at the very end of the first section where behaviors are slow to develop and also slow to be unlearned. In the modern world of women in industrialized countries, the way instincts are expressed has changed slightly with time due to less demanding survival conditions. However, the influence of the female's primal instinct on her behavior remains evident. Remember that. You're not dealing with the modern women. Feminism hasn't created anything. We're still dealing with our Paleolithic brains here. Now, yeah, it's subdued somewhat because the evolutionary pressure just isn't there for survival, but it's still a predominant factor. And you'll always see it. If you just map it to your everyday life, you're going to see how it plays out. Case in point, girls can earn their own money, but they still want you to pay for dinner. That's because back in the day, girls couldn't hunt. So they expected you to bring meat to their dinner cave date. Out of all the parts of this book, for a man in a relationship to internalize, to understand, to make second nature his understanding of him, I have to say it's this part here. Learn this, internalize this, staple it to your forehead, paint it onto your ceiling, put it in your bathroom, read it when you brush your teeth. If you understand nothing else, understand this. The stages of female manipulation. Testing the male, seeking communication, putting him to work, evolutionary selfishness, and self-determination. Those 5 steps are why every relationship has a very similar pathway, and they're all go into detail here. So first, testing the male. If you're thinking this sounds like, hey, is this what you talk about when you think about shit tests and comfort tests? It's like, yes, this is exactly what we're talking about. A woman will always test a male who she is sexually attracted to. For a psychologically healthy woman, a survival and sexual desire must always harmonize with each other. A woman who tests men not only for survival benefits, such as his ability to provide, is denying her sexuality. A woman who tests him only for his sexual appeal is either planning to live her life without men or is being self-destructive. A lot of guys think it's broken and damaged women, but a lot of times it's just she's young, she has an insane amount of abundance, so she really doesn't care about your provider instinct. It's not that she can't bond with a man, it's not that she can't settle down, and it's not that she doesn't require these things from a long-term relationship. She's just not looking, so it's not there. And again, the point to take away from this for men is that girls always test men they're sexually attracted to. And I think a lot of guys forget that. They wonder, how can women be such bitches? Or how can they do this? Or why can't I just have a girl who's calm, drama-free, and yada yada? It's like, you can have all that stuff, but just realize then you're basically friend-zoned by a girl at that point. If she is sexually into you, she will always be this pain in the ass. She will always be testing you because that's what she's hardwired to do. In the same way that you're hardwired to go give your girl a slap on the ass in the morning when you had that morning coffee and you're finally awake. It's just one of those things you have to accept as part of the mating ritual, the process of men getting together with women. It is what it is. Next up is open up to me, please. So in the first stage, the woman has screened out weaker males. The man was specifically chosen by the woman for a relationship. In the second stage, the woman acts as if she's seeking deeper communication with him. A strong man will start to sense that an attempt is being made to weaken him, and he will then usually react with certain predictable behavior patterns. He may get angry, or he may withdraw. Arguments that seem to the man be based in nothing logical at all. I'm sure you've seen that trope of like, men just need to emote more. It's okay when men cry. Men need to show off their feelings. Why don't we talk enough? Why don't we communicate? Maybe she cries in bed and wants you to console her. This is the part that matters. Again, your good example for this, you'll see all the time. Women, friends, social media, in real life friends, online, offline, doesn't matter. They will complain that some guy broke their heart, men ain't shit, Oh, the guy never called me back. He tugged my hair, he came in my face, and then that was it. And everybody's like, oh man, that's horrible. How can he treat you that way? And they become emotional tampons. They're not realizing. Or the best example is when guys say, you know what? Not all men are like that. I would never do that to a woman. To which I argue, she doesn't care. Like, this stuff isn't for you to pass as a test. It's for the guy she's already been attracted to. And you can tell there's a lot of bitter resentment in girls because they do have a sense of entitlement. And it's flat out the case. Social media, the internet, interconnectivity, giant populations, they've made it deceptively easy for women to have sex with like top tier men. Ain't shit women meeting top tier men. And that's the problem, is that top tier men usually have very, very high boundaries on what they will and won't put up with. Like, yeah, they'll sleep with any girl, but they'll only want to keep the ones that are the best from their perspective. Now, most women justify this by calling the guy abusive. They'll justify this by saying he's a dick, he's not loyal, everything. It's funny. In the narcissist, everything is about them except for blame. And so they always offload this blame onto the guy. Now, sometimes it's true. Guys sometimes are objectively pieces of shit. I get it. But most of the time, what you're seeing is sour grapes. So just remember, when you see these wants for more communication, for more vulnerability, what they're trying to do is get a man emotionally hooked. And that only matters if you're that top tier guy, that hypergamous best option. And by you saying, I would never be like that, don't worry, bro. You're never going to be in a position where you had to be. Next up is putting him to work. Honey, please take out the trash and wash the cat and please hurry. When and if a man opens himself up emotionally to a woman, in the sense that we discussed in the preceding subsection, from that point onwards, the woman effectively owns the frame of the relationship. Now, the act of destruction of attraction can begin in earnest as she starts her attempts to take over aspects of the man's life which directly affect her material interests. For example, purchase decisions can now be made jointly, which, in cool light of rational analysis, really are the result of a woman's manipulation attempts and the man's desire to maintain some semblance of peace in the household. I love this example because the road to hell is paved with naive but good intentions. Everybody who's been in this situation should already know there's so many examples of this in any relationship that you'll notice. It's always starts off something small. Hey, go get me that glass of water. I'm comfortable and I don't want to get up. Rub my back on the way to sleep. Take out the trash. It's weird. I didn't think this one was common, but girls expecting their men to take out the trash is like a perfect example of putting him to work. You'll see it in other examples like, hey, we should make our finances joint. Meanwhile, the guy's been like a super saver, very thrifty, earns more money. The girl, not so much. Want to make the finances joint, then money can just disappear and now it's nobody's fault. It's a collective decision. It basically says, I've managed to land a good man. I've made a good man hooked on me, and I better be getting the good results from it, so let's get some things out of it. And this is a tricky phase because if a girl falls out of love with you, this phase can still last a while. Well, still don't want to sleep with them, but I would still rather, I'd still rather get a new purse, or I'd still rather get that trip to Tahiti with the kids, or I still want a baby, or any of those other nonsense things, or I still want to look good at the PTA meetings. So it's one of those weird phases, and they talk about it a bit later, but simply put, strong boundaries are really the only way ahead on this thing. Like, to understand you're being manipulated is one thing. To ensure you're getting paid fair market price for that cost of your manipulation is wholly another. And a lot of guys have a big problem with this because they fear rejection to an extent that they are afraid to look after their own best interests. They're afraid of losing out to that power dynamic, and by doing so, they actually make things worse for themselves. Hence, why the marriage rate is just falling like you wouldn't believe. The next one, female evolutionary selfishness. Quoting here, I am never satisfied no matter what you do or no matter how hard you try. This stage begins once a woman has succeeded in having her formerly strong male open up to her emotionally. In this stage, any communication with her partner is only for the purpose of deriving something useful for her and her children. At this stage, she will exhibit a total disregard for the man's psychological and material interests. This man will be put under the power of a strong and constant psychological double-blind, along the lines of, if at this point the man decides that he doesn't care about what she says or does, she will assert that he's not a loving husband or boyfriend, and I can't live with him because he doesn't understand me, or I do not feel anything for him anymore, or sex without communication is a turnoff. Once again, inducing some very negative feelings about the man. So these double binds are kind of important because they basically set it up like, open up, tell me about your feelings. You start doing that, she sees you as weak, she loses attraction. You don't do that, all of a sudden you don't love me anymore, why don't we talk? Again, these are a weird ambiguity. And again, it's not because a girl doesn't like you. It's not because she doesn't love you. It's not necessarily because maybe you've lost some value over time. Maybe you got a bit fatter. It's nothing like that. You can still be the same top tier guy that you were since day one. But her hardwired instincts. Remember, genes are playing a game that's on like a scale of eons. And we're playing a game that's based on decades. The genes, everything that has made the human species good, involved a girl's basically falling hard, falling heavy for a guy, getting knocked up by him, and then running through that process as quickly as she can again, because the more children from the more different men that they had, the less chance a single parasite or a single predatory threat took out the entire family. So you got to remember, you're fighting against nature here. So she may be good for you, but her hardwiring is saying, yeah, you got to lose interest, you got to leave this guy. Big thing for you is to understand the nature of this double bind. It's that what she's asking for is actually what's going to destroy the relationship. On this point, again, it's boundaries. You still have to stand up for yourself. You still have to assert dominance. You still have to assert no. You have to assume what she's saying is actually a double bind and not an honest intent of increasing the satisfaction of the relationship for anybody. It's like I said, girls have this thing where they just can't be happy, they don't want it, and so you gotta act accordingly. And this leads to the last part, the self-determination stage. So in this stage, the female expresses her resentment and dissatisfaction with the relationship. This happens virtually without exception in the case of male partners who have become progressively and psychologically weaker over time. And that's the end game of this thing. All this stuff, testing the man to see if he's top tier, getting the man to emotionally validate himself to her so that way she has him hooked, putting him to work to get the most benefit out of it from an evolutionary standpoint, finding out that that kind of thing is actually what reduces attraction, and then put him in a bunch of double binds to reduce that ambiguity to make herself fall out of love with him. Then, self-determination. I need some space. This isn't working out. We should see a marriage counselor. And the problem is, by not understanding these dynamics, so many people make their relationships worse by still dealing with it as if you're in a way earlier stage of the betaization process. Now, arguably, if you're at this point, damage is already done, and you really should be looking at your exit strategy and finding a different girl. But I remember Royce back in his first year post talk about how to win back an ex-girlfriend, and it's about the closest I've seen to any kind of strategy about getting out of this phase. What it means is essentially, you have to get out first. And then before the girl's psychological hardwiring kicks in, she may still try to fight to keep you back. I mean, the concept of dread is kind of predicated on guys who reach this point, and how do you go from this point back to the beginning, either with her or with a different girl. So it's a huge and expansive topic that I can't do justice in just a quick synopsis of this book. So take it for what it's worth. Just realize at this point, writing's on the wall. Charles Bukowski, Jordan Peterson, Neil Strauss. I like these guys. A girl will gladly ignore hundreds of guys that would have her just to be rejected by a guy who wouldn't. A guy will work hard to get something that he can't have because he's stubborn. Everyone wants what they can't have. Next up is the manipulation endgame. In modern, politically correct societies, a common result of the manipulation process is the woman ending the relationship or acting in such a way that the man has no choice but to end the relationship. Infidelity is likely in either case. Psychological counseling and family therapy usually fail to address the couples and help them in the situation because they start from the shaky assumption that an exclusive, committed relationship is always healthy and that having sex with different partners is sick. They also fail miserably in detecting the slow and dangerous psychological process whereby the mind of the male is confronted with schizophrenic double messages from the female, which should be considered to fit the clinical definition of borderline personality disorder by the most experienced clinicians on the planet. Do you remember talked about it tons of times in this channel. Narcissistic personality disorder is the male disorder, and borderline personality disorder is the female disorder. And this is one of those 5 out of 10 ways it plays out. A dissatisfied wife is basically a BPD chick on a socially acceptable scale. And again, this is why marriage counseling doesn't work. Marriage counseling assumes step 2. They need more communication. They need to talk about their feelings more. She needs to be hooked on you like that. But no, you're well past that point. And they always think that. And again, when he talks here about sex with different partners always being sick, they're talking about guys who get side pieces or mistresses. Again, assuming blank slate that men and women are both the same. It's not the case. Now, not all men do this. Not all men have to do this. But just be aware, it's very easy for a guy to distance sex from relationship. Very simple. In fact, that's usually in the cheating itself. If a guy is top tier enough, because there's 2 types of cheating. There's like red pill and blue pill cheating. Blue pill cheating is usually validation seeking. The wife didn't have sex with them. The wife treats them like crap. And they just want some girl to tell them they're super special, and they jump on the first girl that gives an offer. Girl finds out about that. It ends up being more embarrassing to her reputation than anything, a display of lower value. And so you tend to get a very negative response. From a red pill perspective, on the other hand, when it happens, it's a girl losing her value, a guy gaining his value, and it's not the sex that turns her off of the thing. It's usually the lying, because if a guy lies about this stuff, it's usually taken as, well, if he's lying about this, I can't trust him in other things. And yes, girls are manipulative, but they kind of like the fact that guys are trustworthy. So it's just sex is really the case in that point. Now, I'm not saying that this is like a strategy to super happiness. We don't have enough information to know how it processes every time, like unilaterally open marriages. I've seen some work. Ultimate Cat is a great red pilled example of that, where it was just the right amount of dysfunction to keep those two going along healthier than ever. But in other cases, you see it where the girl is just, well, when the kids turn 18, I'm out of here. But for now, I'll just put up with it. And they make that conscious decision to put up with it. So when we say a woman would rather share an alpha than be saddled with the beta, don't equate that with a girl will happily do it. Sometimes it's just a pragmatic choice. But again, from a manipulation standpoint, just be aware of all these dynamics in place and understand that there is no help for you from the outside world, because people fundamentally don't understand this stuff, nor do they want to. And in the few cases where there is an attempt, like in the psychological circles, women invade the space and tend to have a real bias against understanding this stuff. Again, it's part of their hardwiring is to obfuscate the female mating process. They don't know what they're doing. They're just doing it because it's uncomfortable to talk about this stuff in an honest way. You know, the whole staring into the abyss stares back. So you're never going to get that as the case until you get a group of men that are completely isolated from female experience, talking about their own thing, hence the red pill. Of course, that's also why we're probably the most hated people on the internet, but, you know, take it for what it's worth. They end off the chapter with some practical advice, and I'm going to get into it. They give, for each little section, a little piece that sums up, I think, rather succinctly. So, first part, testing. Testing the male. Understand, testing never ends. You will never get into a point in your relationship where your girl stops getting on your nerves. That's always going to be there. And again, just like Atlas, don't ask for a lighter load. Just want to be strong, have stronger shoulders. So this is what it is. In fact, the day your girl stops giving you grief is the day you should start to worry, because at that point, the indifference has kicked in and you're probably on borrowed time. Next up, seeking communication. Now, seeking communication is really her signal that she is suffering from emotional ambiguity. The only important word in any such statement coming from a woman is feel. It's so important that in many cases, it doesn't matter what she feels, as long as it's any emotion stronger than indifference. Remember, I talk about this, Rian's rule. Anything she says she's feeling, you add right now at the end of it. Anything she says she won't do, you add with you at the end of it. As long as she's feeling something strong towards you, that's a good sign. Even if she's angry, even if she's hurt, even if she's sad, even if she's happy, as long as the emotions are strong, it's something you can work with. And the last thing you want to do is coddle them. Being put to work, that's an easy one. That could be stopped by simply saying no. Read anything that any of us red pill guys have put on about boundary enforcement, about holding frame, and that's exactly what this stuff is for, right there in the middle of the process, the putting to work process. This is the workhorse of the relationship stuff. Next, for the evolutionary selfishness, putting a price on your leadership also means having your own moral standards, whereby it's subcommunicated from the beginning and throughout the relationship that you, as a man, expect certain behaviors and certain types of treatment from the female, if she is to retain your interest in being her leader and protector. And this right here is why red-pilled men are considered to be so misogynist. They hold girls to standard. Heaven forbid you act like you're the prize and you hold the girl to a standard and you work your ass off to make sure that you're warranted, you're worth that standard. A lot of girls get very mad by holding them to any standards at all because that requires work and a potential of failure. And that's why you don't talk red pill to women, because they will just get mad at you and they will shit on you and they will tell you how offended they are and they'll try and get you fired because that makes them feel better. So don't waste your time. Just realize when a girl is going through her evolutionary selfishness phase, hold her to standard. Hold her to standard, and whatever happens, happens. But this is hard for a lot of guys because as soon as you become validation seeking, as soon as you treat the girl as the authority figure in your life, and I know a lot of guys say they don't, but I guarantee you when they start mapping it to their real life situations, they realize they kind of do. It's like I actually have a post on my blog where I talk about this, the trolley problem. If you guys don't know, that's a argument where there's a trolley, it's going to run over 5 people on a track, and you have a button. If you hit the button, it moves to a different track and hits one person. Now, if you want to be a consequentialist or utilitarian, it depends on whether you'd hit the button or not. Not here to get into that part of it. The point I'm getting into it, though, is if you're the kind of guy who defers the decision to your woman, or you're afraid of upsetting her, or that fear of rejection prevents you from acting in your own best interest because you don't want to offend her, you want to treat her well, or whatever reasons you have, you're not actually in any moral quandary because you're just offloading the responsibility of your own life onto somebody else. You're letting life happen to you. And so if you're not willing to face rejection head on, if you're not willing to resolve any fear you have of upsetting a girl, any walking on eggshells and that, you're not actually living your life. You have no moral stand, and this stuff will always work against you. And finally, self-determination. Your best chance to salvage the relationship may be to start right back at the beginning. Let her know that you're equally prepared to leave if you're not getting the respect and admiration that you want and deserve. You never want to be in a position where you're chasing or begging a woman. Not only is that a pathetic position to be in, but any shred of sexual attraction that had remained in your woman will be completely destroyed in such actions. I could talk about this at length. My book 2 is essentially this one paragraph here expanded to an entire book length. The whole process of Dread Game is based on that one paragraph there and expanding it. There's way too much to go over here. So just take it, understand it, keep it in the back of your mind, and as you go forward, as you start watching more videos from guys like me, or Rolo, or Rich, or Troy, or John, Paul, John Fitch, all these guys, keep it in the back of your mind, and then you'll kind of start to see a puzzle piece click together for you. And once you get there, you're going to realize things are going much better. So that there is the chapter on manipulation. For further reading, come on to my blog. I talk about the 5 types of manipulation. It's a good supplement to this kind of stuff. I'll read the chapter. Like I said, we went on for about half an hour here at the time of this recording, and I still haven't touched on half the examples they used. I haven't touched on a lot of the details that are missed out here. This is a synopsis. This is not a replacement for buying the damn book. Give it a read, apply it to your life, see the places where you're making these obvious mistakes, and I guarantee you start seeing this betaization process from this 10,000 foot level, you're going to start seeing it and where it applies in your relationships. Sometimes faster, sometimes slower, but they always happen. So on that note, I will catch you guys on the next one. Cheers.